Hello, so today I will be reviewing the Hifi P1 disclaimers as always. This IM is my personal unit. I have not been paid to say anything good or bad about them. I will review them to the best of my abilities, and all thoughts and opinions are my own. Also, the cable that I used for this review was not the stock cable, as I'll discuss later. And so, I would talk about Mike's how I got my hands on the P1 and how planars are different and all that, but I mean, you've heard the whole spiel before. Planar IMs are alright. Well, let's just get into it. I'll talk about that later. Okay, so for the 10.5i P1, I'd say you need a fairly decent amount of power. If you have something like a Cadelx 5K, you can power it with 2.5 millimeter balance, like this here. But you really have to crank up the volume so you can have enough power to drive the thing, because yeah, you won't be able to run this off your phone. It's really not capable. You need a decent amount of power. So like maybe a Hibi R3 Pro could do that if you have that, or a DAP similar to that, or if you have a powerful dongle, like a what do you call it? E1DA dongle. Yeah, that one will most likely work as well. Just saying, you need more power than normal. And for accessories, let me see. For the accessories, my case isn't the stock P1 case. I got the one that comes with the T4, I believe, which is a pretty decent case. It doesn't have a zipper, which is like It closes with magnetic or no, it just closes with magnets. And I mean, it's all right. It's not my favorite case, to be honest, but I mean, you could do worse. Like, mm, the stock tips are all right, just typical chi-fi tips. It's whatever. And the stock cable, I have it here on another IM. Um, as you can see, this is like a loose 4-wire braid. It's really the cable's really plasticky and janky. As you can see, it's look, it's so thin and jank. I really don't like it. I mean, I like the color of the cable. Looks nice. The jack's alright, as you can see. Um, but other than that, look, the chin slider, it works actually, which is a redeeming quality. But other than that, I don't really like the cable. It's pretty jank. The build of the P1, as you can see, it has a decently wide nozzle. So the tips you should use should probably have a wider bore, unless you can stretch out your narrower bore tips on it, which I don't really recommend. Um, I mean, the build of the P1 is fairly small, as you can see in my hand. It's really nice in the ear, because it's not like, it doesn't have the wings, because I know some people hate wings on their IMs because it digs into their ear. It doesn't have that. It's pretty small. The nozzle pretty short. Um and it's solid metal. As you can hear, it's pretty good. I have no complaints about the build. And the fit, as I said before, it doesn't dig into my ear. It's pretty small, light, fits my ear fine. Some people might have trouble with the angle of the nozzle or length of the nozzle. I didn't. And overall, it's pretty enjoyable to wear. And let's move on to the sound. So, for sound, the bass is kind of rolled off in the sub bass frequencies. So, if you're listening to something like Why So Serious from the Dark Knight soundtrack, it won't quite have, the in your head wub wub sounds that you'd like. But it's not like it's too lacking in that department, which is nice, at least. and it still has enough to where I'm decently satisfied. And for the mid bass, there's enough mid bass thump for me to enjoy music with like drums and uh, all that. It's it's pretty good. I I wouldn't say this is the most textured bass though, but overall it's pretty decent bass. I'd say, especially since this is a planar, if you really wanted to EQ it, I've EQ'd it to sound really bassy while still having clean bass, so that's pretty good. For the mids, I actually found the mids to be fairly enjoyable. They were forward and nice. There was decent texture. Uh, I instruments sounded good. I mean, to be honest, I I'm fine with the mids. I honestly prefer the mids of this over another IM. Technically, I prefer the P1 over that IM, but I'll get to that later. Anyways, what did I say? I said it's nice and forward. Female and male vocals are forward. Instruments sounded nice in the mix. Okay, and I said there's decent texture. Okay. So, treble is where I can see a lot of people having issues with. Me not really included, because past a certain point, there's a lot of treble air, and I can see that being really fatiguing or irritating to people. Luckily, it at worst it was only mildly well, not really even mildly irritating, just like a little bit too much air. But apart from that, I really enjoyed the air that the P1 had, because it gave the P1 a more airy open sound, which helps it out because, well, I'll get into that bit. I found the air to be not really sibilant for the amount of air. I mean, sometimes you might get like a little bit of it on some songs, but for me personally, I didn't hear that much sibilance, which was surprising for the amount of treble. And so that was pretty nice. And onto technicalities, I found detail retrieval to be pretty pretty good for the price, I'd say. Um, because of how the P1 presents the sound, the details are easy to hear and pick up. You don't have to strain to hear them for the details that is like uh, retrieved. Detail that is retrieved. No duh. But yeah, as I said, detail retrieval is good. Soundstage actually is about average, but because of the air frequencies, I'd say that it it ends up making the soundstage sound more open, even if the size isn't like above average for an IM, which is good. I found there to be uh, I found so the width I said is normal. The height is pretty much normal, I'd say. Depth, uh, I'd say there's a little depth, but I mean, it's hard for me to hear depth in like budget stuff, because it's really hard for depth and height to be portrayed really nicely on IMs, because I've heard like height and depth before with the vocal clears, and I still remember that. And I'm not saying IMs should come close to like what a headphone does, but like if it doesn't resemble, if it doesn't have any semblance of that, it's like it's all right. It's average. Like, can't expect too much, especially not for this price. Okay, so imaging on the Tin Hi-Fi P1 is alright. It's not too standout, but it's decent. And also, and let me see, layering and separation, I'd say, are actually pretty decent. I'd say pretty good. Uh, it's not like gonna blow you away, I feel, but I think it's pretty good overall. And it doesn't lead to like congested sound or anything, which I couldn't say for another IM that I will mention later. Let me see. So final thoughts. Uh, I'd say the P1 is a pretty enjoyable IM to me personally. I'd say if you're looking for a planar IM that can take EQ well and you're fine with how much power it needs, which is a fair amount, I'd say the P1 is a good pick. No, I've not heard the updated P1 Plus because no one sent me that. I've not heard the Timeless because no one sent me that. And I've not heard the Let's Shower S12 because no one has sent me that. But for my first planar IM, I have to say it's pretty good. Would I say it's the best IM in the price range? No, simply because I haven't experienced most of the major picks in this price range, but you know, if you can find one for a good deal, you know, used, or maybe a local store has a discount, you know, try it out, maybe get one if you want. It's pretty good. And that's about it. See ya.